I'm recording. Welcome to our Heroes of the Heart podcast. I'm Steve Garvin, the host, and I am joined by today's Hero of the Heart, Cathy Nesbitt. Cathy is a health and wellness advocate. She's the founder of Cathy's Crowley Composters, which was established in 20 years ago. She also has Cathy's Sprouters and Cathy's Laughter Club. She's a multi-award winning environmental innovator who uses workshops and inspirational speaking to motivate people to live a more sustainable life. Cathy is also a certified laughter yoga instructor. That's quite a list of credentials and activities that you're involved in, Cathy.
Thank you. Yes. Take your pick. What do you want to talk about?
I think I will always associate you with laughter, but maybe with like a laughing worm or something. That
I worm my way into your heart.
There you go, in a very good way. So tell me, how did this journey begin? When did you identify first as an environmentalist or environmental advocate?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, I didn't come in from the environmental place. I came from the gardening sector, thinking I wanted a better garden. So that's why I wanted to compost. And therefore the planet benefited.
Sure.
But it was selfish. I wanted all the scraps for me. So what happened? So 1993, don't worry, we won't go year by year, but so 93, I bought my house, moved out of Toronto, large center. That's where I'm from. I moved about an hour north to a small town, and I think I'm really a small town girl. I really felt much more at home in a small place than the large bustling center. As much as I love the center, as much as I love the energy there, I don't want to live there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, but although I moved out of the city, like most people, that's where the jobs are. So, I lived out of the city, but I worked in the city. So I would take the GO train, which is our commuter train, from my town and go to work. I worked at a law firm, and I would collect my coworkers' lunchroom scraps. I took an ice cream bucket on the GO train, like on the train, and to collect my coworkers' scraps. And they really thought I was probably a little bit cuckoo. Like they were like, "You want our banana?" Like, people want to do the right thing. That's the beautiful part, Steve, is if you have a mission and you want to do something. I lived out of the city, but I worked GO train.
Okay. Gosh.
It's okay. Everything good? We're laughing.
It is
and
good. Technology has a mind and a voice of its own.
Sometimes, right? Yeah. What are you going to do? It's all good.
So you're collecting everybody's bananas and peels and probably orange peels and that kind of thing. And
coffee grounds, all of that, right? Just I had the little ice cream bucket so every day I would bring it home on the train. One day I forgot it on the train, by the way, but I did get it back. You want to hear that story? It's okay. I'll be quick. So I left my bucket on the train. The next day we were driving in, my husband and I were driving into work rather than taking the train. And I said, we have to stop at the GO station and see if they found my bucket. Like, I was devastated. I worked hard for those scraps. So here's how the story went. I said to the person at the station, I said, "Did you find an ice cream bucket on the train yesterday?" And they said, "What was in it? Like, how many did you find?" "Oh, we got a whole bunch of lost and found." and I said, "Coffee grounds and banana peels," and they kind of took a step back, like, "No, we didn't find anything like that." And I said, "Well, if you do, let me know, and because I'll be taking the train again tomorrow. Can you keep it for me?" Kind of thing. Yeah, we'll make a note. So that day, so fun. So I was walking, when I got to, I worked in one of those office towers, and I was taking the escalator up the thing, and a woman behind me said, "Excuse me, do you take the GO train from Bradford?" And I was like, "Oh, do I have a sign?" Amongst all the people in Toronto, can you imagine? And I said, "I do." And she said, "You forgot your bucket on the train." Because when you take the commuter train, right, you always get on the same car, you sit in the same
Right.
seat, you see the same people, but you don't know them. They're like family.
Right. Family you see but never speak to.
Anyway, so fun. Anyway, I got my bucket back. There you go. Long story. But anyway, that was the beginning kind of my environmental bent.
So she had seen your bucket, and did she took it home and then brought it back for
No,
you?
it was left. No, it was still there the next morning. When she took the train the next morning, it was like, oh, there's that girl's bucket is sitting on the train there.
Oh, so it didn't ever go anywhere. It was still on the train.
I guess that's how good they clean the train, right?
I'm thinking like when the conductor or whoever comes along and goes through the train, they see a bucket full of, banana peels and so forth. They're like, oh, this is trash. And so they'd throw it in the bucket and, haul it away. And that'd be the last you ever saw of it. But actually that wasn't what happened.
No, it actually had the lid on it. So even if it was an ice cream, the 2-gallon or whatever ice cream thing, plastic thing. So, yeah, you would think even if it was ice cream, it would have been all melted.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, curious, right? It's just curious that it wasn't disposed of, but never mind. I got it back. Yay. Yay me. So that was the beginning. And I was like, imagine like, I just saw kind of garbage everywhere. That's how you know when your mission is something, because I just kept like, I never wanted to go on a cruise although I like traveling, because I always thought of all that waste. I couldn't imagine, like people told me, oh, there's food all day long. You can just have food whenever you want. It's like, so how much waste is there if it's always so fresh, like the grocery store, right? It's always looks so beautiful because there's people taking out all the rotten stuff, people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right? You go out to the back of the dumpster and there's all kinds of food in there because
right.
Anyway, whatever's not pristine is now refuse.
Right. So that was my thing. So I knew as an avid gardener and composter, I loved composting outside. And that same year when I got my house, a teacher friend asked me to look after her worm bin. And like many of the people may be watching, like worms, I was like, ugh, I don't want to have worms in my house, but I know the value. I know that the worms are going to make wonderful compost. Okay, right. I'm going to do my friend a favor. She's going away for the summer. I'll look after her worms. I'll get black gold. She'll have a worm sitter. Everything with kumbaya, right? I'll try it. I don't know. Maybe I'll like it. Maybe I won't. And it was awful. Just so you know, it was a horrible experience.
I was expecting it was the most wonderful thing in the world.
It was not. And I think people often, sometimes when we try something new, we're not great at it. And we're like, oh, that didn't work. No, I'm not going to do that. But sometimes we have to try. Even laughter yoga, by the way, is interesting, right? Okay, so I was like, nope. I did keep the worms alive. I just had a house full of fruit flies because I didn't manage it. It's not a necessary, right? Okay, so I was like, not doing that again. I'll just buy worm compost. By the way, if there's like, how many worm farmers have you ever met?
I don't know if I have personally met any that I know of. We actually were looking at it, doing it for a little while. Didn't really get that far. We were doing composting and that kind of thing, but we never actually bought worms or started a worm farm. But I have looked into it. Yeah,
well, but I thought, if I want worm compost, I'll just buy it. But if there's not many worm, like it's not like you go to the garden center and there's, they have it, they don't, or you go to not Canadian Tire in the States, whatever, Home Depot or whatever, you go there and pick up your bag of stuff. No.
Yeah. One of the last city that I lived in, I now live in Asheville, North Carolina, but we were living in Tacoma, Washington on the totally opposite side of the country. And one of the things that Tacoma does is they have something they call Tagro, Tagro, and what it is they take all the solid waste and make manure out of it. So it's actually humanure.
Okay. Yes.
And create, and you can go there and basically fill up your 5-gallon bucket or your pickup truck or whatever I don't even remember if it had any cost to it, but it was a super deal and really, really rich soil.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I
So
love it. Oh, I didn't know you were thinking about doing worms. That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's so that really that was my beginning. And yeah, it's really just been a huge journey. So that was my first thing. And I think for people listening, like, it's like, how do I find my passion?
mm,
Take note of the things that happened. Like that, okay, that was 93. I was like, yeah, never doing that again. Getting my psych degree, 15 years, so stay in school. Right. I just went at night. I mean, it was just a hobby. I didn't really care about the degree. I just liked learning.
sure.
Anyway, I did get a degree. Yahoo. All right. So 20 years, I get my
That
degree.
is something to celebrate.
It is. Thank you. Yes, I know. Thank you. So 2000, I get my psych degree. And people are like, what are you going to do with a psych degree? You need a doctorate to do something in psychology. It's like, no, everything's about people.
Yes.
Psychology is everything, just like the environment. Right? Like, anyway, whatever. And not that I'm diagnosing people or whatever. It's just, it's.
Right. But just one of the things that I study is psychology. Just a number of the books that I read, Brene Brown included among that, but definitely not limited to that. I think the more we understand psychology, the more we understand ourselves, the more we understand our relationships with other people. We are all connected. And I think psychology is an incredibly important field to have some understanding around.
Absolutely. Every new topic that you read about, it's like, oh my gosh, I think I have this.
Going to
oh no, I have this too.
Got a smorgasbord of things going on.
and actually, I believe that we are kind of all of those things anyway too. Just like we're all the colors of true colors and all the Enneagram numbers and all of these things. Anyway, whatever. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But when people are looking for how do I find my passion? That's a question that I often get. Like, how did you know worms? Right? I didn't know right away. Right? I looked after them. I was like, nope. I don't like worms. I'm afraid of worms. And not that I'm afraid of them, just that they're gross. They're icky. I don't want them in my house. No. But so I had that experience. Great. And I think I had that on purpose, like my house full of fruit flies, because it's not a necessary component. Right.
So how did you go from the house full of fruit flies and the bad experience with worms to actually, now that you're like we began with, I think about you and laughter and worms, right? The laughing worm lady, if you will. And obviously something changed for you to go from, I don't ever want to do that again, to now where you are doing it and a big advocate for it.
Yeah. So psych degree 2000, I get a job at a group home working with challenged adults, 10 homes and a farm. They didn't compost. They had a VOC program, a vocational program where everyone would go to work at the farm and they didn't compost. So imagine all the food waste at a farm or at an organization with, so many clients.
Well, I know from our household with 6 people in it, we regularly we have a little bucket next to our kitchen sink that we have to take out a couple times a week probably with banana peels and all kinds of other things. And one of the reasons we're sure to take it out is so we don't have a bunch of fruit flies flying around the kitchen and so forth.
Yeah. Put shredded paper on top.
Well, that's actually one of the things that we don't necessarily do shredded paper, but we do, like if we use a paper towel to wipe something up, instead of throwing the paper towel away, we actually throw it into the compost because it's all
like a carbon filter then.
Yeah.
Yay. Beautiful. Yeah. So that's so you can imagine how much at this facility, and they didn't compost. And I introduced composting, not thinking about the worms, like, hey, why don't you have a composting program? Right? Seeing garbage everywhere. So fascinating. And then the greenhouse manager said, hey, why don't we do take it a step further and do vermicomposting? And I was like, ever done something and you're and it didn't work out the way you thought it was gonna.
Right.
So you're like, I'm never doing that again. And then
Yes.
somebody says, hey, Steve, why don't we, whatever it was? And you're like,
Ah.
right? That feeling in your stomach, like, oh, that didn't work last time. No, why would I do that again? I don't want to do
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Right? That little
Yep.
voice thing.
Yep.
And then I was like, wait a minute, it's an institution. They're not getting worms tomorrow. They have to have meetings and da da da. It's going to be like forever before they decide that it's a good idea.
Sure.
Okay, so then I'm like, oh, let me go do research, right? So then the worms again. So then I go do research. I'm like, wow. And as I researched the worms and vermicomposting, I discovered the magic. And here's what I read, like what really turned me on was red wiggler worms. They have 5 hearts each. Wow. 800 to 1,000 a pound, 4,000 to 5,000 hearts in a pound of worms. Like that, I was just like, holy cow.
Can you say those numbers again?
Yeah. 5 hearts each, 800 to 1,000 worms in a pound. So they're small worms.
Wow. So like,
right?
A
pound is about like this many.
Really?
It would be like there's a picture on my website of a pound of worms.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So 800 to 1,000 in a pound, 5 hearts each. So that's 4,000 to 5,000 hearts in a pound of worms.
Wow.
That's a lot of love.
Right.
Right. It's a great Valentine's gift. It's the heart, right? We're talking about the heroes of the heart. The worms the worms are the heart heroes.
Wow.
Because they, so very cool. And so I really went from ooh to ah.
Wow.
Because they eat half their weight per day in food scraps. So they turn garbage and what we call garbage into gold. So it's just like, oh my gosh. And they do it on site, like in the house with an aerobic process. So meaning with oxygen. So it doesn't smell like rotting food. And then they take your food, like your food scraps and your paper, they turn all of that into black gold. So you can grow more nutrient rich food. So it's like the infinity sign, you feed the scraps to the worms, they eat it, you grow more food, you eat the food, you feed the worms.
Sure.
On site, you're saving money from hauling and the planet from hauling. It's going in a hole. What are we doing? Why are we putting it in a hole? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And here's something that's really shocking to me and which really fired me up once the worms came back to me again. I believe it's why I was put on earth. And to bring this easy way for people to understand it. I think the way that I bring it and the laughter really helps. I get them laughing and then say, oh, yeah, I have worms too. Like people say, is this what you do?
Worms are wearing to your heart, right?
People will say to me, is this what you do? You just laugh like your business is just laughing and you get paid for, and yes. And my main thing is worms, like, and then it's like, oh, what? But then they already like me, so it's an easier thing than coming in and saying, hey, I have worms and you can too. They're like, oh, worms, what? No, don't. Okay, so here's the thing. In 2002, the landfill for Toronto closed, for the Greater Toronto area. Closed.
Really?
Yeah, it filled up. Yeah, somehow, when you put trash in every day, it fills.
Right, yeah.
Right, okay. It's not rocket science. It isn't. Like I don't have that kind of science to go. Okay, never mind. Okay, so our landfill closed. And although Canada is second largest country in the world, we couldn't find a place to site a new landfill because nobody wants that. Nobody wants a landfill, right? No, leave our forest alone. Right? So we started exporting our garbage. 6 million people in the Greater Toronto area, half living in condos, whatever, right? A lot of garbage. So we started exporting our garbage to Michigan. Sorry.
Wow.
1,000 trucks a week, 200 a day, Monday to Friday.
Wow.
Sorry, everybody. It's astounding. So I was like, I have a solution. And so funny, like really interesting how the universe works. So 93 worms got introduced. 2000 psych degree work at the group home, introduce worm composting there, get injured at work, interesting, have to leave there, come home, there's an ad in the paper that says, are you a woman? Do you have a business idea? Yes, yes. I say, I say to my husband, I'm quitting my job because I got injured. I couldn't work there anymore. The universe is like, nope, you did your time here. You served here. Time to move along. And I was sad because I thought working with that demographic, with folks with special needs, and I don't want to offend anybody using the wrong term. I come with an
I've
open
got two
heart.
brothers who live in either places like that or similar to that. So I really.
But I'm used. I don't want to, like, people say I can't use that term. I don't know what term.
Right, I know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I love that demographic. I just was like, oh my gosh, this was what I was put on earth to do. I really thought because I worked in an office for 20 years prior to what I did. Yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sad to be leaving this demographic but now with laughter, now I've weaved my way back in there, and it's very cool how it's come around. So our landfill closed, and I was like, I had a solution, and then this business idea was already before the landfill closed. So I was already in that program. And I said to my husband, I'm going to quit my job, take this course, start a worm business. Won't this be fun? And it was fun because my spouse was gainfully employed, right? I was safe. I could go have my little worm business. This will be so fun, right? So that was great. I took that course, started my business. 2002, the landfill closed. We had a garbage strike in the summer. Of course, why would you have it in the winter? Everything would be frozen. There would be no smell, right? In the summer when it's hot and humid and smelly, and Toronto, a world-class city, not really when there's mounds of rotting garbage, right? Yeah. That's bad for publicity. So
yes, it is.
Right. Okay. So a solution had to be found in a hurry, right. Anyway, so that's where my journey with media started, because I got an article in the Toronto Star, because I went on a road trip. The people were lining up for hours to drop off their garbage. And I was like, they don't compost, because you compost. If you compost, it takes the stink out of garbage, people.
Yeah.
Right? It's the organic stuff that smells.
No, you're right. Absolutely. I hadn't made that connection before, but yes, you're right.
Right. So I was like, I'm going to go on a road trip. I don't know what I don't know. The universe spoke to me way back when. I'm intuitively guided. For somehow I do these ridiculous things that aren't so ridiculous. Like when I look back, I'm like, I went down there by myself in my worm. I had my worm t-shirt on, Cathy's Crawley Composters, by myself. Young girl disrupts the union. They were really rude. They would have beaten me up if it wasn't being videoed by a private investigator.
Really?
And I talked to him beforehand. It was interesting because I arrived, there was like, I don't know, a lot of, I'm going to say 80 or 100 picketers. And I was like, and the people all lined up. So I didn't care about the picketers. I wanted to talk to the people that were lined up, and I had questions. So I talked to this private investigator. He said he was hired by the city and by the union to video everything in case there was any skirmishes.
Okay.
So this was 2000, kind of before everyone had a cell phone.
Sure.
Right. And anyway, so I felt safe knowing that it was being recorded. At least there would be evidence. and I didn't think that I would be assaulted. I really didn't think that anything would happen. It's Toronto, it's Canada, we're nice. Right. Anyway, so I started talking to the people in the cars and saying, do you compost? Why not? Would you? All of these questions, anyway. And the picketers were so angry. They were shouting at me, right? The mob mentality. It wasn't one person. It was the mob. They weren't individuals, just like what happens in a group, right?
Yeah.
You're not yourself. You're the collective.
Yes.
So they were shouting things at me, get out of here, and swear words that I won't say. And I was like, felt like Wonder Woman in a way. I was like, nope, I can be here. It's a street, da, da, da. And then they said to the people in the cars, because I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't threatened by them for some reason. I had this shield. I don't know how. When I think about it, I'm like, how did that happen? Anyway, then they said to the people in the cars, if you take anything from this woman or talk to this woman, we're not going to take your garbage. So people rolled up their windows, right? Because they had a mission. They were there to drop off their garbage. Like
Right.
talking to me was a distraction. I was kind of fun. Like there I was causing this thing, this
Yeah.
visual thing, but they were there for a mission. So people wouldn't talk to me then. And then they called the police. The picketers called the police. And then the police came. And I didn't want to be arrested. Today I would be arrested, Steve. I would be like, yeah, take me away. But because I know more now, right? That would be good media. But I was like, no. So I went to the Star, Toronto Star, the biggest paper in Canada, and got my interview. And I called up my husband the next day. I got my first article in the Star, July 18th, 2002. I phoned my husband. I'm like, yeah, I got an article in the Star. Woo! And he said, I'm on my way home. I just got downsized.
Oh my, wow.
No. Oh,
Was there any connection between the two, or
no, that he was working, whatever,
just
right?
kind of the timing of the universe?
Oh my gosh, but remember I said I never would have started, the universe is a trickster, all right. I never would have started my business if we selling worms by the pound. Are you kidding me? Something that people don't know about, and I got to create a market. I didn't invent the worms, but I'm marketing this thing that people don't want. I never would have done it. Like the universe is really a jokester. Really, for sure. It's so funny. Ha ha ha. But no, I joke, and in 20 years in, I'm fine now, right? It's okay. I'm still here. But now I joke and I say, couldn't he have just got downsized tomorrow so I could celebrate my article in the Star? Because I was like, how can I celebrate when my husband's hurting?
Right.
And I'm hurting, therefore, right? We're a collective. We're a pair.
Yeah. Wow.
And now we're in this together.
Kind of the start of it all. And that's really interesting to see how, the trickster nature of the universe gets us to do things that we would never have otherwise expected to do. I'm wondering, how did that launch your business? Did you start getting a lot of responses or interest in what you were doing, or was there still a long journey after the newspaper and the conversations with all the people bringing in their trash?
Yeah, so that started my journey on media. I realized that early on in my business that getting media was more valuable than buying ads. And having it told from a different perspective, somebody interviewing you and then writing it up, or however they create their content.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's really a journey, because it's fascinating that I have a psych degree, because although I've had over 300 articles, TV, radio, a documentary, if you're afraid of worms, you're not looking at that newspaper article. You're not listening to that radio interview. You're just turning the dial, or you're not.
Yeah.
Next. And it's probably some unconscious, right? It's probably like you're just. And what I'm learning, like, it's interesting having a psych degree again, because I love people. I love learning people's stories. I just think people are so fascinating. Everybody has, because we only know people when we meet them. Like, I only know you right now, but you have a whole past, and I have a whole past. Yes. It's just fast, and I find people fascinating. Yeah. So that I have a psych degree is fascinating, and I'm meeting people as adults who were traumatized as children in the schoolyard, or by a sibling after a rainy day, like when the worms used to be all over the place after the rain, depending where you are in the country or the world. And people, maybe somebody chased them around, or put a worm in their shirt, or they had a fishing experience with worms that, the green goo coming out, whatever,
Yeah. So I'm curious as to how you leverage that with 300 articles. I imagine that you had that first experience with the Toronto Star. How did you continue to build upon that first article in order to get to where you now have 300 articles? And I imagine, and I know I just saw you on a television expose just within the last month or so, right?
Twice.
On
the 6 o'clock news. I'm an expert. You know what it is, Steve? It's my superpower.
Your superpower?
That's my superpower, is getting attention. And because I just do stuff. I don't think about things. I'm intuitively guided. And I just kind of, when things come in, and this is what I attempt to let people into my head for a second, is when a message comes in, and we all have had this experience where we're like, maybe we're in the shower, we're outside, we're doing something, and then we get this thought. We don't know where it came from, but a thought comes in. We're like, oh my God, I'm going to do that. Whatever it is, It might not be a business, but I'm going to travel here. I'm going to go here. I'm going to call this person or do this or that, whatever it is. When I get those moments, I call them like sparks of inspiration. When I get them, I act on them. I don't think about it. I do something because I got that message at that moment. It was a gift from the universe at that moment that seeped into like all the things that, imagine all the stuff we're exposed to all day. I don't know, 75 million thoughts. I don't know how many it is a time.
Well, I know we get exposed to at least 5,000 advertisements a day just through all the different ways that shows up.
Right. And we don't remember them all. We don't.
No, not at all.
Everything.
I mean, our brain tunes out 99% of it.
Yeah.
So you're kind of worming your way through the media, finding in a very good way, in order to get your message out there about your business, about, how do we solve this problem with the dump closing down, what tips do you have for our audience as to how to work with the media? How do they?
Here's what the media is looking for. So media is needing content. Be a content provider. So, and here's what I mean. They're looking for something that solves, like, don't go and promote your business. That's not why I get media, by the way. I get media to share my message so more people can know what I know and do what I'm doing so we can save our beautiful planet. This is all about service. This is.
So what would a pitch look like? Like if you were to, when you reached out to the television stations, or did they reach out to you in the last?
Now they reach out to me. They reach out to me now. So you start, what I suggest is, if people are looking to get exposure, people discount the small media like your local paper. There used to be a lot more of them. The larger outlets are looking for new content. So they're scanning all of those small little community papers, the little community cable stations, if they have them around anymore. There's not many cable stations, but that have the community programming. The larger outlets are looking for there because that's where the new stories are. That's, when someone's just starting out, like, how do you get on the 6 o'clock news? Unless, you're, doing something bad.
We don't want to go that route.
No, right? You want to be a good news story. So when I say solve a solution, like have a solution. So mine is way bigger than just the garbage crisis. I thought it was, but the worms are alchemists. So they also take that garbage, what we call garbage, food scraps and paper, and they turn it into black gold because our food is broken. We have this health crisis, or a sickness crisis, I would say.
Right.
And because our food's broken. So it's hard to have a great, strong immune system and healthy body when our fuel is broken. Food is our fuel, right? And we're doing all this monocropping. This is really heavy, but I really think it's important. And that's why I laugh too, because I have this heavy topic. I'm trying to get people to have worms in their house and da. Why would I do that when I can just throw it in the garbage? Yes, you can. But what about your great grandchildren? They're really going to be like, why did they do that? Why did they know? Because we know now. We know, Steve. We know. We can close our eyes all we want and say, la, 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 I don't have time. You don't have time not to. Stop it, everybody. You don't have time not to pay attention to this talk. And take action. Like, I don't even care if people feed the raccoons. Because the raccoons got to eat and they're out there anyway. They're breaking into your garbage. So just leave it out.
Yeah, clever little buggers they are.
I joke, like, I know.
I can tell you all kinds of stories about raccoons and how clever they are, but if there is a way, they will find it to get to whatever you don't want them to get to. So
no matter what kind of technology we try to come up with, Toronto is Raccoon Nation. There's a documentary called that, and they have this organic collection program now since the landfill closed, right? 6 million people. You can't just keep on trucking it out of the country. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Costs too much money. Like all of our tax dollars just for that.
Yeah.
Now
Wow.
what about healthcare?
Right. And anything else, police and roads.
Right,
and
all
whatever.
those things, right? All those things, like, yeah, anyway. So they came up with this raccoon proof green bin, and I laughed when it was all over the news, oh, this raccoon, this big launch for this new bin. I was like, now the squirrels and the raccoons are just going to work together.
Yeah. Wow. So what I'm hearing is I'm starting to see how the pieces fit together. There's this big environmental issue that shows up, both locally and globally. The worms are one of the ways that we can remedy the situation. But there's also all the heaviness of dealing with all that, right?
Yeah.
I intentionally don't watch the news and have not watched the news for a very long time.
Good.
But it still seeps through. I mean,
yeah.
There's no worries about, if you stop watching the news, you'll still hear the news.
You'll know what's happening.
Right. I'm not closed off from the world. I just choose not to intensify it by watching the news. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the point is that there are lots of environmental issues going on, and it can feel really heavy. It can feel overwhelming and, honestly depressing. And so that's where the laughter yoga came in, was how do we kind of balance that out?
Yeah, it was, it took me a long time to realize people didn't want what I had, what I was flogging. I think it was like 2012 or something. Somebody said at an event before COVID, I was exhibiting I was doing about 200 events a year.
Wow.
I know. Wow. Imagine me now. I'm like, come on.
That's like 4 a week. That's
crazy, like schlepping stuff. I mean, speaking things, and yeah. So a lot of I was busy. Well, I lost my train. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. So one more person said to me, "Ooh, worms in the house," and that time somehow it hit me in the heart, and I realized the light went on, and I realized, oh my gosh, people don't want what I have. Like I thought they did. I thought, oh, people need this. People need it.
You see the need, and you're like, well, why don't more people see that need and move towards it?
Because we don't buy what we need. We buy what we want.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And I'm not I don't have a business background. So I've just been, what I would suggest for people is, if they're going to have a business, like, get some business training, write a business plan. And like, I did take that course, but that was it. Right. And I didn't, anyway, like, get a mentor and all that stuff. Do some networking, join a club.
Well, that's one thing that's beautiful about it. I mean, is that when you do tap into that network of business-minded people, then, and I have 2 degrees in business. I've got a marketing degree as my undergrad, and I have a master's degree in accounting. So, I mean, I learned, and just by nature, I know I am an avid and a lifelong learner. There is so much, even with those degrees and years in corporate finance and so forth, there's still so much more to learn. As soon as we stop learning, as soon as we stop opening up to the new possibilities, is when we really stop. It's when we stop growing and being able to use what we have to create something more, right? So
yeah.
Regardless of what degrees you have and where you went to school, keep learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know where I was going to go with that, but I really want people to live how I'm living, Oh, so about people, make sure if you're going to have a business that you frame it in a way that people want it, or how they want it, rather than,
yes.
that you think they need it, trying to force it, rather like let them come and get it rather than you be like, oh, you need this.
What appeals to them, not, yes, exactly.
Because when I started, I would say, and I still say this sometimes, I still say it because it's impressive, but only for my ego. I would say I have world hunger solved. Because I believe that I do. If everybody did this, everybody in the world did this, we would all be creating this wonderful black gold, and then we could plant seeds and have more nutrient rich food. We wouldn't need as much food because the food we had would be nourishing us. So we would get full naturally. And anyway, so it's a huge mission. But when I say that, then it's like this huge thing, and people are like, oh yeah, okay, that's like, how do you start, right? It seems that's what people shared with me, that it's too big. Oh, that's fine for her. That's a nice mission. Good for you.
Right.
Now I say I have world hunger and world peace solved, because the founder of Laughter Yoga, his goal is world peace. And so again, these two huge missions. So for people that are just like chugging along in their life, they're just looking one step at a time. They're not looking at the broader, like how we're all one giant mosaic.
Well, I'm thinking about, as you're saying that, again, it's kind of like the worms, 800 to 1,000 worms in a pound of worms. It's not, it is the collective nature of those worms that enables them to do the magic that they do, right? And similarly, we can think that we have to solve the world's problems by ourselves, and honestly burn ourselves out in the process, or we can figure out how do we create the movement in order for us to have that ripple effect where I reach out to one person, they reach out to another person, and we have create a bigger difference, because I'm not trying to do it all on my own. I'm trying to influence one person to take one action, right? Get a compost bucket, or, recycle, or get a handful of worms or whatever. And so what I'm hearing in our conversation today is that we're talking about worms, but it's so much more than just worms. We're talking about, how do we change the world in a positive way? How do we make a bigger difference? It's not by doing it all ourselves. It's by figuring out how do we make a little dent in the universe so that it ripples out and reaches out to a larger community.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. My cat does the same thing. So.
Oh, cats love the Zoom room. They do. It is exactly that. Oh, that was so well put, Steve. It was so well put. That's exactly it. It's this, it seems like such a small thing, like, oh, having worms, but it's so much bigger. It's, over 75, when I started, I learned early on that people didn't want what I had. I mean, I know it was 2012 that I really understood, but I was like, how do I get the message out? So that's when I started to do school workshops. And over 75,000 students have seen my presentation.
Wow.
And that part is so much fun. Oh my gosh, being in front of the kids, and I'm there, I'm animated, I'm high energy. And I know I'm way different than many of the teachers. And sometimes the teachers scare me when they're shouting at the kids to sit still. And it's like, and I'm kind of standing behind the teacher, like looking at the kid, like, I know. It's okay. I know. Oh, I'm afraid too. Because sometimes, right, it's like the kids have energy. Like we're electric. We're meant to move. Imagine we're not meant to sit still. There's lots of time for that when we're at the end of our life. We don't need to move. Like we got to move now.
Yes.
It's ridiculous how like many of our systems are broken. Let's say that.
Well, that's a really cool thing to bring up, and by reaching out to 75,000 students, those students become adults, and by having an impact on them when they're young, it can have a bigger impact when they're older, when they have their own house, and they're throwing away the banana peels and the apple cores and all that kind of thing. And
I've met students, I've met people at events. They've come up to me and said, Cathy, oh, you came into my grade 3 class. And because of you, I took environmental studies at university and whatever.
Wow.
Now and it's like, wow, That's cool. Thank you. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, Cathy, our time unfortunately is coming to a close, but I love the principles that you shared with us today, that by taking simple little actions, like that step that you took nearly 30 years ago now, where you agreed to allow, to worm sit for a summer, it has gone on to, impact 75,000 students beyond 300 different media opportunities, and I think for our audience out there who is out there to make a world of difference, that, if we just kind of build upon that one little start and keep going, that it can grow into something really significant. And the world is very much in need of both the peace and the plenty that good environmental practices can create for us, both globally with our earth, but also with ourselves.
It starts with us, Steve. If we need to be whole and healthy and, good intentions and all of that. It sounds woo-woo and whatever. We are energy. So we get to decide either we're high vibe energy, yay, it's hopeful and positive and looking up, or woe is us and we're doomed and we're looking down and we're depressed and sad and anxious and guilty and shame and all those negative things that the media, feeds on, and social media even feeds on even more. It's just like this festering festerfest, and so we really get to decide where we want to live our life. Be the mass. I attend a lot of healing summits and hopeful energy things, and I recently heard that everybody's goal should be to master peace, like master self-peace, because when we're feeling peaceful, then we can really serve.
Yes.
Then we can be of service because we're whole. Then we can look around and it's like, I see you over there. You need something. Let me help you. How can I help you?
Yeah.
That's the question we should be asking people. How can I help you today?
And my mind is playing with this and, thinking, we can either create a garbage or we can create a garden. We can either
wow,
from that same material, we can create a rich garden, or we can create a stinky garbage that, takes all kinds of extra resources to manage. And it's really our choice. What do we do with this stuff in our lives? What do we do with the stuff inside of us? And how do we use it in a proactive way rather than just a reactive way?
Oh, I love that. Can I just share, when you were saying that, I just thought about people, like either we can be like, put them up and think that everybody's against us, or we can be like, hey, come on in. You look like you need a hug. Like maybe not a hug for the non-huggers, a virtual hug. You know what I mean? But like we can either be battling or we can be loving.
Yes, absolutely.
Not both. Yeah.
It's absolutely the choice that we have to make. So thank you, Cathy. Last thing, where would our audience find you? And I'll be sure to put your links in the descriptions and so forth.
Yeah, worms are my worm website is cathyscomposters.com. That's probably, that has everything. They can get to all of my offerings. And the laughter is cathysclub.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Cathy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
To talk with you. And to our audience out there, be the bright light